Hi everyone, and happy fall to you. It's been a little while since we did one of these virtual tours. Maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago we did one and the fall color was just starting. And now we're kind of on the other end of the fall color. So we wanted to show you some of the blooms and fall foliage that are at peak. And for those of you who maybe haven't tuned in before, I'm Kristina, here with Cassidy. We're here at the Missouri Botanical Garden, and we're going to take you on a tour of the Japanese garden and just see what's looking good right now. So thanks for joining us. So we are here sort of at the entrance of the English woodland garden where it feeds out into the Japanese garden. And where we are right now is in a sort of grove of ginkgo trees that you can see are just starting to turn yellow. And these trees they'll turn really quickly, and they'll be very striking when they turn just completely all leaves yellow, almost all at once. So any day now that could happen, and usually when it does, they don't hold on to their leaves for very long either. So that's when you'll get sort of a carpet of gold leaves under these ginkgos too. So these are a huge fall show that we are keeping our eyes on right now.
Yeah, this is like second peak. So we had a lot of fall color last week with maples and ash trees and some other trees that were putting on a good show, and then lost a lot of their leaves with some of the weather that we've been having. The rain and wind knocked a lot of those leaves off. But sort of peak two, the second wave of fall color, certainly here at the Missouri Botanical Garden, are the ginkgos and then the Japanese maples in the Japanese garden. So that's what we're looking at, and you're still picking up a lot of color from other types of trees that haven't dropped their leaves yet. I see some tulip trees, some pumpkin ash. There are a few lower lying, like bottle brush buckeye, that have really good yellow color right up here actually, that are still, you can see the leaf drop, you start to see the branches a little bit more bare, but that still have their color. This is interesting because this still has this is the bottle brush flower stalk, and you can see how it transitions over to this yellow color, but it's actually dropped, probably this shrub in particular has dropped about 50% of its leaves already. So the nice thing about the first peak of fall color is that all the trees are a lot more full. This second wave, the branches are a little bit more sparse, but it really makes things like ginkgos and Japanese maples stand out in that respect.
You can see a lot of red popping out in the landscape as well. Not sure what that tree is all the way across the lake, but a lot of these are burning bushes.
I think that might be a sugar maple or some sort of maple. The bright red one, that's on Tea House Island. So there are some maples, and I think sort of the muted copper. I believe those are the Zelkova trees over there. And yeah, is that burning bush, the brighter red, the smaller shrubs?
Yeah.
So that's really popping here along the lake shore and on Crane Island out in the lake.
And this tree that we're passing right now is going to be one of the first to bloom in spring. We were probably showing it to all of you several months ago. I believe it's an apricot tree, a cherry relative, but
yes.
It looks very similar to the cherry trees in terms of how the blooms look. So that's one of the first things to look for in the spring, and now losing its leaves, turning yellow for fall. And we're filming this tour today on Halloween, so not live today. By the time you all see this, it will probably be November, but it's misty. We're out here in our ponchos today, enjoying
let's get a look at
fall
those.
weather.
Let's get a look at those ponchos.
Will you model this for us? Yes.
Yes. Staying nice and dry.
Looks very cape-like for Halloween as well.
I think one of the interesting things for me with fall color is there's all the leaf change, and that's what everybody focuses on, but what makes the changing leaves really stand out is the fact that things are still green. So one of the things that you'll notice in the Japanese garden, and I think what makes it one of the more striking places to see fall color in the St. Louis area, and certainly at the garden, is that you have all of these evergreen trees that give you that green backdrop that provide the contrast for everything that's changing color. So it's not just about the trees that have leaves that change color, but it's having that green backdrop to set it against.
And you can definitely see as we're walking how much of that leaf drop has happened with all the rain recently. There's quite a few leaves on the ground.
Leaves, and then things like this. I guess maybe this is like an overcup oak or a bur oak. So this is an acorn, but you can see the cupule is so big that you can hardly see the nut inside. So that's another thing, in addition to the leaves falling, lots of nuts and fruits coming off the trees. We're probably a little bit past persimmon season, and you've probably noticed a lot more acorns underfoot, especially if this is a mast year. So peeled back the, oh, I hear one. Ooh. Look out. So
that sounded like big enough to be a
walnut. I know. This is a this is a pretty big acorn. I would say
that would hurt.
That would hurt. having been plonked once or twice by a black walnut, this may be a little bit of a danger zone. I see a few of these big oak trees here.
And another tree that you'll see its fruit on the ground this time of year is the Osage orange tree that makes those big, huge, round green fruits that are sort of brain-like. And we've talked about those in our tours before because there are quite a few of those in our children's garden area, but we've actually put up netting to catch those fruits for the exact reason that we're talking about right now, because if one of those were to hit you on the head, it would really hurt. Here's a pretty area. This looks like some kind of Japanese maple up here.
Yeah. So we're going off a main path here towards one of the entrances to Tea House Island, which is closed to the public most of the year, but you're able to kind of walk up a little bit and you get a nice view of the lake and some of these Japanese maples. There's across the shore here this little stand of bald cypress, so that's another tree that has really interesting fall color. It's very striking copper, coppery orange, and so these are conifers that are deciduous, so they will their needles essentially change color and fall off just like all the other deciduous trees, and they don't hold on to their needles all year round like the evergreen conifers. A really great place to see a big collection of bald cypress is actually at Shaw Nature Reserve around the lake there. That's a really striking display when that kind of hits its peak.
And these are a later changing one too, or sometimes they'll start to change early, but it seems like they
drop
stick
really
around
late. Yeah.
for longer. Yeah. And you'll see that on the central axis too by the climatron. Oftentimes, even by the time that Garden Glow starts for the holidays, those cypresses will still have some of those copper leaves. Speaking of Garden Glow, if you are looking forward to the holidays now that Halloween is over, you are able to get tickets for Glow online. It opens in a couple weeks here. And you can find more about that and get your tickets at mobot.org/glow. We have some new displays going on this year, so it's definitely a good year to check it out if you haven't, or if you have, and see some new things, keep the tradition going of visiting annually.
Yeah, this is our 10th year doing Garden Glow.
It is.
And I gotta say, I was here last week checking out some of the new installations, and the show that's out in front of the climatron in the area that we call the central axis is fantastic. They've added thousands of new lights to that area and just really taken that part of the experience to a new level. So that's a really exciting addition this year that I would encourage people to come out and see. And we'll obviously be sharing some of that on social media as we get closer. And as Christina mentioned, it's about 2 weeks or so until it opens in mid-November. And I've talked to a lot of people, they like to come early. You know, it gets really busy, as you might expect, between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So those first couple of weeks are really prime time to come out early.
And it's a little warmer sometimes too earlier on, so that can be nice as well.
Yeah, this is a nice vantage point. From here, if we look out across the lake, those two bigger trees with the bright red and orange color, those are black gums, Nyssa sylvatica. And one of those, I think the one on the left, is, we know, over 130 years old. We know it's been here since the 1800s. So that's pretty neat, especially considering how much this area has changed in the intervening 130 years or so since that was planted. But those trees have really great color, those black gums. There's a few more over by the Kemper Center for Home Gardening that also look really good right now. And gosh, what else are we looking at? I see some dogwoods. There's some dogwood.
Japanese maple.
Yeah, some burning bush. And then the neat thing about this, and I don't know if we've talked about this on a tour before, but one of the cool features of the Japanese garden is what is known as borrowed landscape. So the backdrop of this canopy, I guess, that we're looking at here, you know, those trees at the far back of your field of view are actually, some of those are street trees on Alfred Avenue, which is outside the garden. But when you take it in from this vista, it's borrowing the surrounding landscape, the neighborhood landscape, and making it a part of your experience here at the garden. So that's a really cool feature in a way that kind of expands your field of view and lets you take in more. There's a lot of really pretty maples along Alfred Avenue that add a lot of fall color. And again, you're seeing that here in this view, whether they're on this side of the fence or the other.
And I just have to say, it looks so much better in person than I can see that it looks on the phone screen. It's much more vibrant and just nice to be out here if you can make it out here with the weather lately. being pretty pleasant. So I would definitely encourage anyone who's able to visit to come this week, because as we've been talking about that leaf drop, sometimes wind or rain can knock out quite a few of the pretty leaves. So the sooner you can come, the better at this point, because we have some things that are still not quite changed yet, but other things will be on their way out for the season pretty soon.
Yeah, and a good cold snap can do that too. So we're lucky to have such nice weather. I mean, midweek looks really great.
70s
in
and
the
the highs in the
yeah.
70s this week.
But you know, I like coming on days like this too. We're closed today, but even if we were open, I think this would we'd still have about as much company as we do now. These sort of gray, gloomy days, I think a lot of people consider to be unpleasant, but there's something about walking in a Japanese garden on a day like this at this time of year that I've always found to be just really refreshing and peaceful.
Yeah. And just for anyone who maybe just tuned in, I just want to clarify we're closed on Mondays.
Yes, thank you, Kristina.
We're filming this tour a little bit ahead of time this time, so likely you all will be watching this on Tuesday, but Monday is the day that we're closed. But agreed, sometimes the days when the weather is, not a beautiful, clear blue sky, sunny day can be some of the more peaceful, rewarding days to be in the garden.
Yeah, this is a big, I think a lot of people know this Japanese maple here.
As its roots.
As much from the leaves as the roots here down at the soil level, but you can see this one hasn't really started to change yet. So this is what we're talking about as sort of the second wave of peak fall color. This is still headed towards color change and isn't there yet. So there's the Japanese maples are one of the last things to change, and some of these can go all the way into mid to late November before they're fully changed over and start to drop their leaves. So if you haven't had a chance to get out and see everything, there's still plenty of transition taking place.
You know what, actually, we should point the camera down because something kind of neat is going on in these rock gardens as well. You can see that those ridges that are designed into the pattern that's designed here are kind of collecting these leaves as they fall and really emphasizing that pattern. And I've been noticing it as we've been walking. You can see it maybe a little bit better over here. But just kind of a neat thing to notice if you're here. This, I'm not sure what these are right here. Do you know what they are?
I believe they're crab apples.
But I was going to point out what you were saying earlier about fruit. From afar, it doesn't necessarily look any different than the leaves, but fruit can also provide a nice pop of fall color. And these are really bright.
And very tart. Yeah, fall color comes from a lot of different sources. This is a great time of year. Grasses are another one that really provides a lot of color, and especially with things like grasses or even hydrangeas, sort of the spent flower heads on hydrangeas. People will leave those things in their garden, and we do as well here in certain situations. And that's where we get that what we call winter interest. So things that persist, change in fall, and then sort of hold this new form until spring. And so grasses are one of those things, and it just comes from all these. It's not just the leaves. Look at these crab apples
Huge.
here. Yeah, a lot bigger than the other ones.
Yeah, these are big. These are like the size of a Bing cherry. And really nice and bright. But to your point about grasses, that's something I personally have just been noticing and enjoying a lot this year. And I think partly because I've been appreciating the Kemper Prairie Garden, which is pretty newly planted. So that's definitely worth checking out, those grasses.
I just happened to notice as we were walking, here's a little azalea rhododendron that's got a few flowers on it, and there are actually a handful of varieties that do bloom in the fall. So there are some in the English woodland, and then there's this one kind of hanging out on an edge here with a few bright pink blooms on it. So which is kind of a good segue, because we're headed towards some flowers that really stand out in the fall, and obviously flowers are part of fall color as well.
So we're coming up here on our display of mums. And you can see there's quite a few of them planted along the edge here. But one thing that is a favorite for a lot of people that's really stands out is these cascading mums here hanging down over the stone wall. They're just really nice. Let's see if we can get closer to these.
And then there's these single stem mums here in this bed in the front. Some of these have been beaten up by the rain a little bit, the single stem. And then the cascading mums up at the top of the wall there. And as long as we've got good weather and we don't get too cold or stay too cold for too long, these mums will be here adding a pop of color for a little while. So that's...
Yeah, they were just fairly recently actually planted out here and moved out here.
Yeah, and these are trained in-house. So our horticulture staff works with these to get them into that into this configuration that can be displayed in this way. And when you look at the evergreens and everything else that are sort of tumbling over the wall, it's a really nice effect here. And this is another area you can see some color change happening in the maples here. There's a really dense planting of Japanese maples here, and it's maybe 50%, maybe 60% color change. So there's still a lot more color to go. And this particular area, the Japanese garden, is a really great place to see that type of tree showing off its fall color.
Mm-hmm. And with the mums at the front here, when that does all kind of happen at once and meet up, it's really, really impressive and beautiful. Great spot to take a fall photo.
I don't know if you can tell where we started our tour. Let's see. I'm gonna point right there. That's one of the ginkgos that was at the entrance to the Japanese garden. So we've done a loop of about half of the lake here, and you can see that one little splotch of yellow, but that whole area to the immediate side of it on either side is also ginkgos that have yet to change. So that's going to be really striking when that all changes. And again, because we have good weather, it should hopefully the change will happen soon and the leaves will stick around for a few days once that happens.
Here's a really nice spot where you can kind of look out at the lake here, back towards Cherry Hill, which again, we're kind of at the nearing the end of fall showy time, but it'll be one of the first things that's showy in the spring.
Yeah, just 5 more months to go and there'll be cherry blossoms again. But you've got some nice, the sort of darker reds of these Japanese maples here on Tea House Island. There's some dark kind of crimson-y color on the dogwoods there across the lake. We have these lovely, lovely Canadian geese hanging out here, taking it all in, ready to provide the soundtrack of winter.
And they will. So thanks for coming along on today's virtual tour. Definitely try to make it out sometime this week if you're able to. There's so much color to see in the trees, flowers, grasses. It's really beautiful. And until next time, thanks for joining us.